My name is Ahmed Farooq, and I'm the ambassador of Pakistan to Denmark. I would like to welcome all the participants today to the second in our series of tech talks being organized by the Pakistan Embassy in Copenhagen. The objective of these tech talks is to share knowledge and to make the participants aware of the cutting edge work that is taking place in the information technology field in Pakistan. These talks are being sponsored by the top IT companies in Pakistan that are offering a variety of services internationally. The first tech talk, which we organized in June, was on the role of artificial intelligence in knowledge discovery and regulatory compliance. You can find a video of that tech talk on the embassy's YouTube page. The topic of today's tech talk is software quality assurance 2021 and beyond. As you are aware that with the rise of digitization, especially in the post-COVID environment, there has been a mushrooming of technologies, and organizations are under continuous pressure to serve their customers in a better, faster, and affordable manner. In this context, businesses are getting more conscious about the quality of software products and technology infrastructure. Speed, security, and defect-free software and technology experiences are desired by every business and IT team. Therefore, software quality assurance to ensure that the final products are free of defects and bugs is an important requirement for businesses. We all know that fixing these bugs after a product has been released can be very expensive and can cause a lot of hassles and resources for companies. Our presenter today is Mr. Jamil Gohir, who is the CEO of Qualitism. Mr. Gohir is an innovator, entrepreneur, and investor who over the span of 18 years has founded several startups and has helped initiate several others. He co-founded Qualitism Incorporated as an independent consulting, auditing, and assurance company specialized in software quality assurance and information security. In 11 years, Qualitism scaled in the MENA region and the US to be a leading testing provider and has been ranked in top testing quadrant by Gartner twice. Qualitism is a ISO 9001 and ISO 27001 certified company. Mr. Jamil has also co-founded Virtual Force, a technology advisory, innovation, design, and engineering firm based in New York. Over the years, Virtual Force has empowered businesses through technology in areas like health tech, fintech, education tech, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and various alternate lending and on-demand models. Very briefly about the IT landscape in Pakistan. Pakistan has more than 2,000 IT companies and call centers that are providing services in all key areas from CRM software, data warehousing, product design, developing, and testing, etc. More than 300,000 English-speaking IT professionals with expertise in current and emerging IT products and technologies are working in these companies. More than 20,000 fresh IT graduates and engineers are joining the workforce each year. There is a rising startup culture in the country, and Pakistan has been ranked number 3 in the world for freelance development by Oxford Analytica. Some housekeeping announcements. Mr. Gohir's presentation would be for around 45 minutes. We would like this to be an interactive session, and you can ask any questions during the presentation by raising your hands. Questions can also be asked through the chat section, and we will take them up. Your mics will be muted at the beginning, and you can unmute them when you desire to ask a question. This webinar is being live streamed on the Embassy's Facebook page, and its recording will be available later on our YouTube page. So let's begin. Over to you, Mr. Jamil.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would formally like to thank you and the Embassy for hosting these talks from the Pakistani IT industry. And on behalf of the industry and on behalf of the Qualitism, I would like to welcome all the participants here. Certainly, all this knowledge that has been created and being created is worthy of being sharing. And these tech talks are basically meant to share all this specialized areas and knowledge that has been developed, generated, and utilized by the IT sector of Pakistan to be shared with the Danish IT companies and see how we could be able to progress and collaborate with each other. So today's talk is around the industry, which is very much there, but it's also dubbed as an invisible giant, which is a software quality assurance industry. A lot of people focus on software development. However, quality assurance, the most critical element, is often ignored. So we'll be talking about how the industry has evolved over the last couple of decades, especially the last 5 years, and then how it would look like over the next 5 to 10 years time span. Things have been moving very fast, and this talk would be focused around the future of testing and how the testing and the breadth of these services would help companies to think through in their future technology strategies. My name is Jamil Gohir, and I'm one of the co-founders. Founded this company about 11 years ago. The company offices are based from US, Middle East, UAE, UK, and Pakistan. Most of the engineering workforce resides in Pakistan, but we have engineers in Middle East and US as well. There would be 5 sections that we'll be covering in the talk today. The growing demand for software quality, what are the causing variables and triggers which have developed this entire stream of software testing in QA to be more futuristic. We'll talk about the trends in 2021 and beyond. We'll talk about the breadth of software quality and how different solutions exist that can be leveraged by enterprise and small and medium companies. We'll talk about a perspective on a couple of industries and how this demand can be met. And then I'll briefly talk about what Qualitatum has been offering and serving over the last 11 years. So starting with the global demand for QA, as I mentioned earlier, software quality assurance is IT's invisible giant. There had been quotations by Mark Andreessen about 8 years ago that software is eating the world. Today we see sitting here that software has already eaten the world. Every mainstream process or human process is being replaced by software. And over the last decade, we have also seen that mobile has inherently eaten up everything, including the software. So everything that was there out now is an app economy. So with all of that happening and mushrooming growth of technology in different sectors, there's a very little margin for businesses to really lose out on their IT and technology initiatives. However, the picture is very bleak on the other side. About 32% of the projects typically in the IT industry fail. All the efforts go down the drain. And with so much happening in the technology, there's a continuous effort to reduce this kind of a failure. People often ignore the fact that software testing itself consumes about 1/3 to 1/2 of all the software development budgets. Typically, you are talking about software development lifecycle and ignoring the software testing. But eventually, in order to make the software development lifecycle more coherent and successful, you have to include the whole software testing and understand the kind of a budgeting going towards that. Then we have already seen that digital transformations are on the rise, especially post-pandemic. And during pandemic, organizations realized that they should have some kind of a digital plan and strategy out there, which has been missing before. And about 40 to 50% of the work in any digital transformation is testing intensive. People often ignore that. Hence, testing being the invisible giant. So why testing? I mean, before it was a back office function, there are a couple of engineers working in the engineering team, building up a software, and the software goes down the drain. Nobody cares because the board, the CEO, the management, they are more focused towards the business. Business is communicating with the consumers. Technology fails, technology comes back. They are not bothered. This was a couple of decades back. Today, everything is on technology. Anything goes wrong, any application goes wrong, any error comes in, the CEO's neck is under threat. So from right on the top of the management, all the leadership is involved and responsible for any kind of failures. Hence, whenever anything goes wrong, the effects are basically in the boardrooms, and the strategies are being developed to really counter those challenges. Um, in the US alone, one of the studies in 2012 mentioned that $90 billion go down the drain because of applications getting unsuccessful due to software problems. So there's $1 trillion investments going on in digital transformations and app economy and all, but about 90 billion of those projects just go down the drain because of the problems in software quality. One of the very highlighted examples in 2015, Toyota had to recall about more than half a million cars back because there was a glitch in the braking software. The software leading to brakes that was basically faulty, and that hurted the repute of the organization itself and the brand of the car very badly. So these are the kind of challenges that are out there. Hence, everybody is now focused back towards the service application and delivery challenges. So engineering teams are working day and night. How could they be able to deliver the software applications right on time, on budget, and without problems? That's where a lot of thinking, a lot of research, a lot of practices are shaping up. Let's go through some of those challenges. There are a lot of manual processes that exist in application development or engineering side as well. You're programming, but then a lot of as your engineering teams get bigger and bigger, and your software development, software codes get into hundreds and thousands of lines of code, a lot of manual practices are holding back the growth of the entire application process and engineering team, and the outcomes are also challenged. Then there's a diverse and growing technology stacks out there. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen that there's a continuous surge in different technology stacks shaping up, popping up, building different kind of technologies. Handling all of them together, bringing all of them together is a big challenge. There are complex workflows and inefficient approvals during the entire software development lifecycle that holds back the service delivery on time. Lack of configuration management tools, inability to replicate right test environments, vendors managing the software development for a lot of organizations, having different kind of practices, not getting into a consistency and coherence of the client organization. These are all leading towards the challenges posed by lack of software testing and quality. And then again, I mean, a lot of organizations do not even have the right understanding, and they don't have the skill to leverage the software quality assurance to their benefit. With all of that, let's skim through some of the objectives that organizations have from the quality assurance or testing teams out there. They certainly want to improve the quality of the software. That's the fundamentals. They want to identify defects before the applications go live on production. Everybody wants to have a clean application code. They want to implement quality checks earlier in their software development lifecycle, because as you move on, the cost of fixing those bugs get higher and higher. So everybody wants an earlier attention towards those challenges. They want to ensure the end user satisfaction. I mean, as the world is moving towards app economy, your 70% of the traffic on any technology platform, on any site, on any portal is actually coming from mobile. The Generation Z and the following generations, they don't even have a concept of a desktop or a laptop. Everything is happening on mobile. So if that user is not satisfied with the interface and the experience, you're gone, you're out of business. Then, of course, all these organizations want to protect their corporate image, and they want to build quality awareness across organizations. So this is again a fundamental shift that's happening in the mindset of organizations. Having IT and technology out there for a few decades, testing and quality assurance was ignored, and now it's getting a mainstream importance in their strategies. Software testing itself, interestingly, is a very big market. Software testing tools is a $2.0 billion market as of a couple of years ago. Software testing services market is already out there for 60 billion and continuously growing on double-digit cumulative growth every year. Cybersecurity services, which includes a lot of security testing and security-related application testing, and then products as well, that itself is a $165 billion market. Then there are connotations around DevOps and dev security ops and all that. that constitutes this entire market towards almost like $500 billion market overall. So if this market is so big, what has happened over the last 5 years and what's going wrong? Let's go through that. So over the last 5 years, we have seen the cloud computing triggered everywhere. Everybody is using cloud. Every organization, every public sector organization, private sector organization, either having their internal clouds or external clouds and leveraging the power of internet to manage their infrastructures as well. Within that, testing as a service on cloud computing is picking up. So that's where it started shaping up. Demand for testing skills to cover up the diversity of technology stacks, that improved massively over the last few years. Automated and continuous approach towards testing, which was not there. Of course, everybody was focused on development and rollouts. But when the effects of all those defects started coming back on businesses, they started thinking through how they can focus on their testing strategy. And for that, when things started getting out of hand from manual and certain testing strategies, then the continuous approach of testing was adapted, and then automation was also kind of a area getting mainstream importance and acceptance. Agile has, I mean, over the last 10 to 15 years, we have seen agile movements coming across. Started from a general movement and mindset, it has adapted into a culture of IT and technology sector, but then it went beyond that. I mean, now people talk about agile in everything, agile in human resource, agile in marketing, agile in sales, agile in other practices as well. So it's kind of a mindset that makes things faster. So when the demand for faster and quicker outcomes pop in, then the testing itself has to be very, very requirement driven. And that's kind of a shift we have seen over the last 5 years. And as I mentioned earlier, the application economy itself that has grown online and mobile, and that has imposed a lot of pressure on organizations to adapt testing and QA in their mainstream strategy. So what's happening today in 2021, and then how it would go beyond? This graph is of very high importance. On the x-axis, you can see the entire software development lifecycle. From requirement analysis phase earlier, programming comes in, unit testing comes in, functional testing comes in, then overall system testing comes in, and then the applications are released, which mean they're put live for users to use. On the y-axis, you see the percentage of defects. And interestingly, the highest percentage of defects are in the development phase, the coding, the programming, where the developers and the engineers are working together. They are introducing all those defects. Now, as you move along in the software development cycle, the cost of fixing the bugs which are introduced in the coding phase keeps going exponentially higher. And you can very well understand that when the application is live and you identify the bugs, the cost of fixing the bugs could be like hundreds of thousands of X of the cost. So people are basically trying to understand this equation more and more, and trying to shift left in their strategy and go back to the engineering phase where the program is being built and the bugs and defects are on the highest, and trying to address them right there and then, because the cost of fixing those bugs in that phase is the cheapest. So this is the fundamental philosophy around which the entire testing and QA practices are shaping up. QA had been a divorced function before. A lot of people used to think of QA as an independent segment than software development. Software developers never inherited the QA as their part of the core team. And as an independent function, they kept on trying to improve. However, as business got more and more pressure, they tried to bring QA as an integrated function where some kind of an overlap happened. But then the speed of the requirement and the business requirements kept on pacing up, and the demand for reducing the costs kept on growing as well. And that brought QA entirely into the software development phase now. And interestingly, it's an inclusive function. If it's not an inclusive function in your organization or any organization, you are basically moving towards a disaster in terms of your engineering lifecycle as well as outcomes associated to that engineering lifecycle. So as I mentioned earlier, there are increased pressures on engineering and business teams. There's an increased risk and complexity of software development. as different technology stacks are popping up. Faster and cost-effective project management is desired by the businesses. High agile and development operation adoption is picking up, and all of that has made quality assurance or brought quality assurance onto the limelight. And then QA is expected as an orchestrator function now, because this function has the core ability to identify the right tool set, the right skill set, and the right process set. And if all of these three things are right, the chances are that the engineering lifecycle and engineering teams could be able to churn faster and churn better. Test automation itself is one very big area. Of course, starting from manual testing, test automation is about testing how to test and coding how to test, which means you're doubling down on the code. And this stream is picking up with a lot of connotations, but I would like to highlight the fact that the importance of manual testing can never be ignored. It would still be there, because ultimately humans are developing software and humans are developing the code, and the code to test a code is also developed by a human. Hence, we have to make sure that there's a right balance between the manual aspects of testing and the automation aspects of testing. It's definitely driven, it's a driver for code transformations. It maximizes the impact, and people are thinking ahead and planning ahead in terms of how to adapt test automation in their main testing lifecycle. One very I would say, focused area is about test environment management. A lot of times, this area is totally ignored in the entire testing strategies by very large scale organizations and enterprise as well. Simply, engineering team is working on one environment, they create another environment for staging, and then they push their code to live. Now, everything that engineering is doing is on one environment, but when testing is happening and the real user is actually using on so many multiple stacks of environments, and the environment stacks get, if we permutate the entire environment stacks on operating systems, on web browsers, on devices, mobile devices, laptops, their hardware configurations. I mean, these environments can go into hundreds and thousands of different environments. In order to be more specific on the software quality, you have to identify the right environments and you have to test rigorously on those environments as well. If you're not able to replicate the environment where a problem is being identified, the engineering team can never be able to solve a problem, because they don't have the right environment where the original defect came in. Hence, there is a continuous focus on building up the right test environments and then integrating them to their continuous delivery and continuous development and continuous integration practices as well. As on the diagram you can see, there's a lot of service virtualization happening, test data happening, data protection happening. All of them is going on to cloud. Engineering life cycles are development, testing, staging, and live. Across that, there are different type of tests which are happening, and then the whole life cycle has to go through continuous testing and continuous delivery. So all these challenges around test environments have to be adapted through building up a very right test environment management and utilization strategy. Artificial intelligence is quite overrated. About 2 decades ago, it was all about neural networks. Now the intermediate layers are so closed that there are a lot of programs and platforms and libraries which have evolved to make programmers utilize the power of AI and machine learning in everyday coding and other engineering practices. Within that, I think it has definitely impacted the area of software testing in QA, and the benefits of AI and ML to think through how to choose different tests from plethora of testing repositories, and artificially choosing those tests and running those automated tests, and then using some machine learning to understand how defects are basically imposing test repositories and then also affecting different test cases. All of that is basically where AI and ML plays a very big role. However, we have seen that there are two challenges in terms of utilizing it properly. One of them is the lack of the right skill set, and the other one is basically the pandemic. The pandemic disrupted the schedules and budgets. Hence, a lot of teams are not able to really leverage the power of AI. But going forward, we'll definitely see how these two domains could be able to help. Of course, they provide you increased cost efficiency, reduced manual testing, shortened time to market, and continuous quality improvement. But then you have to have the right skill set and tool set to really uplift and manage all of that. Test data management is another big area. A lot of times, enterprise don't plan and they don't have a generation strategy for their test data. Very large scale applications. Imagine there is a airline or a banking sector application which constitutes thousands of test cases and use cases, and then has millions of users out there. Now, trying to understand different type of data those millions of users would be utilizing, you have to have some kind of a strategy to use that data to test the application in a real-time manner. So there are a lot of laws which actually comes in for safeguarding the data itself. So organizations tend to lose out on utilizing the right data, generating the right data, and then also managing that data continuously as the application grows. For that, there are a lot of different tools, different platforms that have evolved in test data management for testing and quality assurance. And this one area would have a lot of role to play in the next 4 to 5 years. As you can see from the diagram, on the left, there are legal and governance challenges, process and roles that needs to be defined, knowledge and skill that needs to be built up, products and tools that needs to be brought in order to build up a structure that can help you manage that entire test data, because test data is a key. According to one of the surveys, about 20% of the defects in any application could be originated because of the poor test data that is utilized to do the testing or built up the entire application. So if done right, you can actually have increase in your release cycles about 30%, 15% less defects, and 100% adherence to privacy laws. So this area is going to go big. Then again, as I mentioned earlier, DevOps and DevSecOps, that's again one area, development operations, a lot of talks and knowledge being generated in this area. This area is definitely going to go big in testing and QA. When you're talking about the software development lifecycle and then development operations strategy out there, security is a very embedded part of the DevOps. Hence, the overall concept of development security operations has popped up over the last few years. And this area is definitely going to see a lot of surge as well. And then, of course, I mean, we have seen 2020 and 2021, there's a lot of impact of COVID. It has impacted everyone, individuals, organizations, governments, and everyone. Within organizations, I think it has impacted the most to the organizations which had legacy practices and they had no strategy around their digital transformations. So they are hit the hardest. Organizations who were already there planning and doing something in their digital transformations, they were able to probably accelerate their strategies to really cope up with the emerging demands post-pandemic. And of course, organizations benefited from the adoption of quality assurance function because agility was out there, collaboration tools, health, data masking, and real-time status monitoring. All of those that organizations were able to adopt, they were kind of able to sustain and stay successful in their road for digital transformations. Of course, pressures of COVID would accelerate transformation more and more, and for that, organizations have to get up with the right testing strategy as well. So post-pandemic, we'll see a lot of impact coming up in engineering, planning, and strategy. So, I mean, we talked about a lot of different segments, how things are evolving, what happened over the last 5 years, what will happen in the next 5 years. But then let's talk a little bit about how different solutions and what is the breadth of software quality in what different areas and how software quality helps out different organizations and what kind of solutions exist out there. Of course, I mean, fundamentally, it's independent validation and verification. Organizations can benefit from a testing function, which is checking out the functionality of the software and making sure that the functionality is right and independently verified and validated, because they want to avoid the undesired results. They want to not have lost opportunities, and they want to avoid the poor user experience. So that's where fundamentally the quality assurance comes in. Now, the software testing lifecycle is very parallel to software development lifecycle. In development, you see a lot of planning, analysis, design, engineering, and testing, and then rollouts happening. Similarly, in testing lifecycle, things are happening in parallel. When you are doing software development planning, you're doing test planning. When you're doing software designing, you're doing test designing. When you are developing up the code, you're doing test execution. When testing happens, you're doing bug management and regression testing. And then once you are able to roll out the software, your testing projects start getting towards closures. So a lot of adaptation, a lot of solutions work in all these different phases of software testing lifecycle, and organizations need to benefit from that. Then when Agile comes in, things turn out to be a little bit more complex. Agility brings in this whole cycle to be repeated multiple times in a faster manner, in a shorter span of time. Hence, you have to think through how you define your priorities, how you define your sprint backlogs, and then how do you run the sprints and then manage those sprints within that time frame, and then what kind of functions in terms of manual and automation are required to manage those sprints in terms of testing and QA. Enterprise have their own way of defining the quality assurance strategy. Quality control is one area, quality assurance, and then consulting services. All of that is something what Qualitative had been offering as well. But then again, I mean, thinking from the diversity perspective of software quality assurance, there's a lot of services sector that involves functional testing, non-functional testing, test automation, designing, production and support management, and then digital transformations happening. All of that gets into a bigger platform of testing center of excellence. A lot of consulting happens over there as well. And all of these solutions are focused and targeted towards different kind of problems that exist. Again, automation testing, a huge area, as we have talked about, will be picking up. It has an impact on the entire engineering lifecycle and the production of the application. If you're able to have the right automation strategy, if you're able to automate well, you can cut down the costs up to 40%, and you reduce the time by over 20%. These are the figures taken from top research done by top organizations. Multiple phases, of course, you do the assessment, planning, automation, optimization, execution, reporting, and then you maintain things accordingly. We have seen that test automation has picked up, that, but as I mentioned earlier, manual testing can't be ignored. You have to have a right balance of test automation and manual testing. Performance is another key area. Imagine Amazon going down for 5 minutes, billions of dollars lost. Imagine Facebook going down or Google going down, millions and billions of dollars lost in terms of ad spend. So performance is turning out to be a very key area as well, which was often ignored, and it's quite complex as well. You just can't say that I can just go ahead and test performance, because it has multiple connotations out there. Load testing, stress testing, volume testing, soak testing, recoverability testing, spike testing. There are so many different aspects in performance that you have to look through, and then you have to have a core focus on application layer, hardware layer, communication layer, infrastructure layer. All of them have to be explored together in order to understand where the performance degradations happen, and then you address them accordingly through your performance testing strategies. And of course, I mean, there are so many different tools that exist for performance. Platform compatibility, again, very big area. Hardware, operating system, software, network, browser, devices, mobile versions. I mean, you think of it and you're lost in the permutations of it. And in order to make sure that your applications are performing well on different platforms, you have to have a performance compatibility testing out there. Information security, again, I said, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, multiple $100 billion industry, I would say. Information security services include a lot of cybersecurity services, audit and assurance services, security products and solutions, and then enablement programs that have to happen. Security itself is a threat out there for businesses, and everybody wants to have planned, proactive kind of implementation of security checks and balances to make sure that they are safe. API economy, there's a term called API economy that has evolved, And this means that a lot of businesses have started building up their applications and then opening up their APIs for others to integrate and benefit from that business while paying to that business. With the API economy, the world of API is a very knit world of application that has triggered Internet of Things and other domains as well. And then again, you have to have a very focused strategy to make sure that all those APIs which are not directly under your control, because you're not controlling that software development cycle, you are able to at least have the right test strategy so that the bugs coming in from external APIs do not get introduced to your applications. So again, it requires a certain level of focus. So these are different breadths and solutions that I talked about. I'll quickly go through the perspective on industries and demand that's existing. A lot of industries, transportation, healthcare, banking, financial, insurance, they are picking up. Banking, financial services, and insurance are the fastest in terms of adopting the latest QA strategies, because the impact and the cost of problems and defects is the highest in this sector, or amongst the highest in this sector, I would say. BFSI's adoption of Agile, DevOps, and test automation is on the high. Post-pandemic digital transformations are even faster. And then there are a lot of contributing factors like enhanced security, customer experience, business responsiveness, and faster time to market in order to compete against emerging fintech. That's what BFSI is aiming for, and hence adapting and continuously demanding more QA and testing intensive focus in their strategies. Healthcare, again, I mean, as you know, is a very important area. Cost containment and time to market is kind of a key challenges that this sector is facing. And then QA function is definitely one of a more focused area coming in terms of their core strategy as well. They want to reduce the defects, they want to improve the end user satisfaction, good customer experience, and of course, contribute towards the overall platform growth. So DevOps and increased focus on data security is one key area, or few key areas that are picking up in this sector. Public sector had been the slowest. The governments move slowly. They are the giants, the organizations itself, a lot of bureaucracy that holds back the faster agile methodologies in terms of churning out outputs and goals. So online citizen services, they have picked up post-pandemic, but within online citizen services, there's a growth in demand and usage, better user experience is expected, and people want to avoid frustrations through better UI, I would say. However, public sector is not able to really cope up with the pressures because one, they do lack skills, two, they do lack the overall focus, three, they are sometimes very much dependent on so many different vendors that they don't have a cohesive strategy to manage all of that. So deficiency in skill set, legacy engineering practices, and not the right mix of infrastructure is what's contributing towards their slowness. However, their realization is very much there, and they want to move fast. Testing center of excellence is something that is emerging for all these sectors. The world is moving towards shared economy. We have seen Uber, we have seen Airbnb, we have seen a lot of other shared platforms scaling up and growing. So shared economy is a big thing. And then on a smaller scale, that shared economy is also adapted in different functions, and quality assurance is one of them. So building up shared testing center of excellence that could be able to provide the right tool set, people set, skill set, and process set to different projects and project teams is what's demanded. Organizations want to build one strong center of excellence that can make things coherent all across the board for that organization. So this is something that we'll see in future picking up a lot of consulting happening around building up center of excellence, and Qualitative is also providing such services. So this brings me towards the closure of the content I wanted to share, quickly highlighting some of the key services that Qualitative as an organization has been offering, fulfilling the unmet demand for QA as the demand grows leaps and bounds. The organization is built by two entrepreneurs, myself and Paramir, back in 2009. It's been 11 years, plus 11 years. We have about 250 plus experts out there, more than 500 clients. We have served across US, UAE, UK, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. We are a ISO certified, security certified, and soon to be TMMI certified organization. Qualitative factor is very important. Independent platforms for testing and QA are in demand, and Qualitative is one of the consulting companies in that sector. We have a high process visibility. We have very scalable and flexible models, references of more than 500 clients, 360 team support in multiple channels. We see across the software development lifecycle and testing lifecycle. And then also we are ranked by top platforms like Gartner multiple times. Hence, we claim that we could be able to solve problems that engineering teams face in a much faster and affordable manner. Again, as I mentioned, our offerings around consulting, audit and assurance, we are doing quality assurance, we are doing information security, we have DevOps and cloud services, and then we have our own products as well. In quality assurance, we are working with a lot of companies, doing a lot of functional testing, performance, automation, mobile application testing, interoperability testing, business intelligence testing, big data testing, responsiveness, and then we are partners with a lot of other organizations and provide services according to their offerings as well. Information security, we do a lot of governance, risk and compliance assessments, security audits, vulnerability testing, penetration testing. We do a lot of consulting around business continuity and disaster recovery. Compromise assessment is very big thing, new thing. We have very much certified resources out there, and we are doing a lot of IoT security and API security testing as well. Within consultancy, we do a lot of strategy development around digital transformations for large-scale organizations as well as small and medium enterprise. We do a lot of testing. We have implemented testing center of excellence for multiple organizations, several organizations, I would say. We are doing a lot of QA consulting, test strategy, tool selection, test process establishment, and then of course a lot of auditing assurance consulting around different standards as well. Again, DevOps stream is there, continuous integration, CI/CD, DevOps automation, microservices, infrastructure as a code. We have been able to provide such services to our clients. Here's a list, diversified small list of our different clients. You can see on the left, there's a BFSI sector, a lot of different banks all across Middle East, US and Pakistan. Then there's a healthcare organizations across US and Middle East, telecom organizations, transportation organizations. We have worked with the top agencies and top platforms. Similarly, within government, we have been heavily embedded into the government sector in the Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar, doing a lot of work for them. Then when I talk about the technology sector, miscellaneous, so Microsoft, FedEx, and a lot of other platforms, we have been able to test them. Education, news and media, oil and gas. Within the BFI sector, I just took up few examples just to highlight some of the cases that we have worked in. So there's a French Saudi bank called Banque Saudi Al Fransi. They have a core banking application that is based on Finacle, provided by Infosys. We are establishing their center of excellence. We have been doing a lot of testing around their different applications, including Microsoft Dynamics, digital banking, Apex inventory, agency banking, remittance projects, digital banking of web applications. There are multiple teams. I think about 45 to 50 people are basically engaged in this account from Qualitative. And we have been doing consulting strategy consulting for them and hands-on execution for them. And now, of course, with all of that engagement over the last 3 years, we are building their center of excellence, which would entail all of what we have talked about. Similarly, Dubai International Finance Center, we have been doing a lot of application testing for them, doing performance testing for some of the banks. Interestingly, one of the banks came to us, I won't pick up the name right now, but one of the banks came to us and asked that their consolidations take a lot of time and often goes beyond 24 hours. Hence, next day starts and they are not able to close the previous day. So how can we solve the problem? IBM and IBM related services and tools were embedded there. But they engaged Qualitative to identify the root cause of the problems. And then when we jumped in, we literally explored the code level degradations, the database level degradations, the hardware level degradations. And when we accumulated all of that, that's where we were able to give them a solution towards how to solve those problems. So that's the kind of a technical in-depth and insight that this organization is built on, and we compete directly against the likes of, I would say, big consulting companies, though we are very small and minuscule. But we do a lot of consulting and win projects against PwC, EY, KPMG. And when I talk about Indian counterparts, we do compete against Wipro, Infosys, and Tata, and have won several projects against them in the Middle East. These are some of the partners that we have worked with: Micro Focus, Murex, Oracle, IBM. Their offerings and their platforms we have been able to test together. Our teams are pretty much certified. You can see the quality assurance certifications. Again, capacity building is one area where we have focused a lot, because QA is so widespread. If you are engineering something, you are focused on certain tools and technology stacks, but when you are doing QA, you have to be on top of every engineering stack out there. So you have to have proficiency in multiple segments. So multiple certifications exist, and our teams are quite certified in those areas. Within security testing, we have one of the top teams who are certified in multiple, who are certified by multiple top agencies. And then within DevOps, we have certifications from Azure, AWS, and other platforms. One thing that I would want to highlight is the product that we have developed over the last few years based on all the learnings in testing and QA field. It's called Quality. It's an entire test lifecycle management platform. Just like any project management platforms, this platform helps software development and software testing teams to manage their application testing lifecycle and staying on top of how the quality of their application looks like. So it's a productivity tool, it's a test management tool, it's a defect management tool, it's a test planning tool. A lot of different features constitutes this tool. And I can proudly say that this is one of the top tools built and compete against the likes of Atlassian and IBM and Micro Focus and other tools that exist today. It's software as a service. You can go on to quality.com, subscribe yourself, and your teams can immediately start using this tool. I'll just skip this slide. I know I'm running late. Of course, a lot of different benefits from Quality. These are some of the top teams, like Emirates is the airlines, Emaar is a building group, Dubai Financial, T-Mobile is a telco. There are different banks. All of them are using Quality, and it's growing every month in a very exponential manner. So I'll stop here, take a break, open to questions. I hope this talk would have helped you understand the spectrum of software testing and QA. Happy to answer and dive into any kind of questions that exist.
Thank you very much, Jamil Saab, for this very comprehensive presentation. I think you have given a lot of important insights into currently what is happening in the quality assurance side of IT development. So now we move towards the audience, and I see a hand, Mr. Zulfikar Kamal. He would like to ask a question or maybe a remark.
Yes, thank you very much, Farooq Saab. Indeed, Jamil Saab, congratulations. Very fruitful presentation indeed, and great to see that we have such a capable company coming out from Pakistan, and who is contributing on the testing and development life cycle here, definitely. Well, there was a lot of data, there was a lot of information here indeed, and then where to start really. But I would say that I would take a little bit of industrial aspect on it. I am running a network in Denmark Pakistan IT Entrepreneurial Forum, where we look at building bridge between Pakistan and Denmark and in the Nordics, and see if we can get companies to collaborate together. And in all of this, I can see that you also mentioned, I mean, the customer journey. The companies that we have in Denmark, they're focusing on customer journey, customer experiences, to get customers to get better experiences and develop products for them. Also lowering their own cost when they're developing and get the cost down, which you can do with the test automation. And then we have compliance and legal issues. There are a lot of legal requirements that they need to comply by when they're developing, also in the fintech sector. And then lack of skill set, that we also experience lack of skill set. So I'm thinking, what kind of a collaboration model can we establish with the Danish companies once we have these value offerings? So the data is still within the Nordics or within EU, but we can make software as a service, and we can give them this efficiency, whether it's on the development lifecycle or the testing lifecycle. We can be sub vendors and for their own development lifecycle. So you can go in and do bits and bytes of the life cycle and give them efficiency when they're developing their own software in Denmark. Because one of the concerns that the Danish companies, they have, that they want the data to be present in the Nordics. They don't want the data to leave the Nordics, and there has been this data shield with the USA that has been now is different. It's model clause, and we have the GDPR rules. So how can we see that the Pakistan company is coming in and who are offering these services as software as a service? They can help the Danish companies in the life cycle and perhaps so that there are not these data concerns and location concerns of confidential data leaving the European content, which we see that the companies, they might have some reservation there.
Thank you, Kamal, for the comprehensive comment and multiple questions, and I'll try to answer them. And if I'm able to miss out on anything, happy to resurface that as well. When we talk about the collaboration, and especially from the perspective of a QA team trying to collaborate with a business that needs testing in QA or that does not know how to leverage testing in QA, I think we need to think of it as an inclusive function. Independent testing in QA companies are on the rise because it's a common perception that testing and quality assurance needs to be dealt in-house in a certain way, but then you need an external viewpoint which is more specialized, more focused, and has a perspective inside out in different layers of technology. Just like financial sector, you empower and take on auditing and consulting companies from outside. So similarly, from technology perspective, the outside perspective needs to come in. Now, it's a misperception that when an outside perspective comes in, the data is compromised. So I think I would want to clear this on the first step. When you as a testing provider jumps in, you are looking at the application, you are looking at the application infrastructure, you are engaged with your engineering folks, and you are trying to work on the application that tomorrow will hold some kind of a data which is important for that organization. Now, until now, there's no data, so there shouldn't be any sort of a problem or an issue for these two counterparts to collaborate. Imagine now that there are existing applications which are having data that needs to be secured, and a third party comes in as a vendor or a partner to support you. Then there are so many different ways, and that's where the test data management has picked up as a practice over the last 4 to 5 years. We are partners with multiple test management tools. We help organizations deploy a test data management strategy. We help them anonymize the data. They don't even have to share the data. They'll use tools to anonymize the data and then share the data so that the right testing can happen. It's just that this data would be required to test to make sure that the actual live scenario does not bring in any kind of a defect. So test data management practices, tools, strategies, they're all out there, and organizations just have to adapt that to somebody who understands how to help them out. So I think I would stop here by saying that data privacy is not an issue. GDPR laws are out there. There are multiple laws in other parts of the world, and there are organizations who have come across countering those kind of challenges. And now organizations in the Nordic, or especially in Denmark, they don't have to really worry about anything around losing out or compromising their internal data.
Yeah.
Number two.
Definitely. Yes. Definitely. I think that is the selling point, that we need to market that a lot more to the Nordics, that the data is not compromised. It is, there is a tool where you can analyze the data and then you can work online with this outside-in approach. So I think that we have some selling points that we need to do, and we need to market from the Pakistan company side, where we can actually get into the big orders in the Nordics, the larger fintech companies, the bigger companies, because there is a misconception of they are operating in a very legal heavy environment where there are a lot of laws and there are a lot of regulation compliance issues that they have to deal with, and the assurance and the auditing is also there. So we need to make sure that we can have a digital service to them that actually delivers on compliance and minimizing the cost and giving them a greater customer journey, and working on our own skill set, and then taking away their concerns, which they have. So I think that we need to do a lot more marketing on that, and then present the pitch cases to them and give them a better price. And I'm sure that we'll be able to enter that market if we can. I mean, I've just seen your quality tool, which I think is fantastic. Great user experience, and really bringing a lot of people in the ecosystem together to talk about the testing, whether it's the engineers, the developers, the testers. They can see, okay, where did the bug fixing happen? Because we need to detect the defects early in order to solve them early, so we can keep the cost low. If we detect the defects later on, the cost will be quite large, and it will be expensive to develop, and there will be a bad user experience. So we need to be very, very, proactive in this phase. And if we can introduce some sort of efficiency, a value add, then why not? We should be able to, but we need to have the right selling point into the Nordics.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Zulfikar Saab. I think we have some more questions, so let's allow other participants also to join. So next, I would ask Mr. Faisal Kamal now. So you have posted a question in the chat section, but it would be better if you could ask it yourself.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Mr. Jamil, for your presentation and for enlightening us all on what you are doing and the type of work that is happening in the Pakistani community with regards to quality and quality assurance. My background is within regulatory affairs and medical device development, and I've been involved in some of the early attempts at doing agile software development in Denmark with some of the larger companies. And all I can say is this is such a fresh breath of fresh air for somebody like a quality professional. Much of what you've discussed here, I have seen as an issue that only technology could solve, so to speak. A lot of, you could say, I've worked as a core team member, and a lot of the things that we could do in that role was kind of superficial. There really needs to be a lot of work done, and automation, I think, is really the way ahead. I think within the regulatory affairs community, there's always been a level of conservatism with regards to adopting many of these tools. Some of that conservatism, of course, this conservatism is validated because it has to do with patient safety. And when it comes to patient safety, I would say a company that is signing the EC Declaration of Conformity, of course, they are looking at the GDPR, but they are first and foremost really concerned about lives, people's lives. And when it comes to something like zero-day vulnerabilities and the types of attacks and things that can happen to a device that is interconnected in today's world, you really need automation. You cannot do it without automation. So I really commend you for what you are doing. And this movement, I think, really needs to be promulgated and come out into the regulatory sphere more, so that regulatory affairs can see this and approach it with another angle, instead of being a cog in the wheel to come up with these solutions using these tools. So I really wanted to commend you really on this.
Thank you, Faisal, for the comprehensive thought here. Definitely, we have been able to build this organization organically over the last 11 years. And there was a lot of learning, as I mentioned earlier, that software quality assurance is often dubbed as an invisible giant. And I've seen the transformation 15 years ago, how organizations were totally ignorant of the benefits of QA and today how it is mainstream, including security, including performance, including other aspects of automation that are embedded as a part of their core engineering strategies. And of course, I mean, as the world grows, we'll see more and more happening in this area. And again, I mean, a lot of misperceptions and sort of communications that exist, they would be shed off as we see the power of collaboration coming up between the QA teams and the engineering teams to solve problems together. Just to highlight again, when as an organization you are coming across and solving or planning to solve problems in software development lifecycle, all that you are engaging with is a set of applications out there as a application, but not as a data holding platform, number one. And then set of engineers who have a certain level of that application available for the testing. So data is nowhere to play a role over there. On the second side, when applications are live and those live applications holds the right data, even then, when you are embedding as a testing and QA partner, you are often doing non-functional kind of testing, like security, like performance, which has nothing to do with data. You're not doing any data. Now, areas where data is required, that I already answered, that it can be addressed through different tools of data anonymity. And for that, organizations are adapting practices around test data management. So hopefully, as organizations and engineering practices grow, we'll see adoption of test data management, test data tools, and then of course more acceptance of these regulatory and even enterprise organizations towards leveraging the power of QA without compromising any kind of a data that they hold.
And I'll just add one more thing. I'm certified as a internal auditor in ISO 13485, and I have extensive experience with 62304, which is the life cycle standard. So if you do need any input from me or I can be of help, don't hesitate to contact me. I think this is excellent work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal Saab. So next I have Rehan Mir. So please go ahead, Rehan.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Jamil, for such a fruitful presentation. I have a few questions, but since we are behind the schedule, I'm just going to pick one of them. So how has qualitism been working in aspects of using a model in system development, and what is beneficial with the use of that specific model, such as Waterfall model or Agile process model, in your opinion? Thank you.
So as a software testing company and being consultants in this area, we have been engaging with multitude of teams, engineering, project management, product management, and then they have a lot of their own internal processes defined. But when we engage with them as a team, of course, as a consultants, we try to understand what sort of gaps exist, what sort of problems exist. And then also, once we are able to get that kind of a baselining done, then we are better positioned to really address in terms of helping them shape up their internal processes so that the end goals that they really want to achieve, they could be able to achieve through the right processes. Agility and old practices and other different models and processes that exist. We have to see how we could be able to construct the right process set so that these organizations could be able to really address their problems and be able to roll out applications faster and cheaper, in a cheaper manner or a cost-effective manner. So I hope I answered your question. If there's anything that I missed out, happy to answer that again.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see there is a question from Mr. Athar.
Thank you very much, Jamil sir, for such a nice presentation.
Athar, I'm not able to hear you. I don't know if anybody else is. Ahmed Saab, can you hear Athar?
All right, so are you able to hear me now?
Yes, very much.
Right, okay. My question is more about the whole development cycle. How can the quality management be sold as a separate use case and a business, because in the development cycle, often companies take that as part of agile development. And then they, as I have also written, they take it as an afterthought. Okay, now the development has been done. Now we have to check the security and the safety and the. So how can that be sold as a whole business model to the companies, that they need to take the quality management, and that is also combined with the security part?
Right. So, I mean, you are asking our secret recipe, how we win clients. Qualitative is in the service of independent testing and QA, and that's exactly what we have been selling to our clients, that they need independent partners who can help them out in the quality management of their engineering pursuits. As an organization, we have come across multitude of organizations ranging from enterprise to public sector organizations to small and medium to even startups who are very early in their engineering life cycle. And we have helped all of them in terms of building up their test strategies and building up their strategies to make sure that their engineering cycles are more effective and they are able to think through how to roll out fast and defect free. Now, when it comes to having this kind of a dialogue with the client and selling the service, you need to really understand what sort of challenges they are going through. Typically, our teams really engage with the client and understand what sort of engineering practices they hold, and then what kind of challenges those engineering teams are facing right now. Of course, most of them comes up with an answer of we have always delayed projects, and when projects get delayed, we have overrun budgets as well. So starting with those two, then we start thinking through and try to understand what kind of their end goals exist. Sometimes teams are not aware of the entire process orientation around quality management. So we do a lot of consulting and help those teams establish testing and QA processes. Once they get those processes out there, they see the results real time through the utilization of tools like Quality. Similarly, when they have any specialized need, like asking for security assessments or performance optimizations, that's where we try to understand their end goals again, and then try to offer them customized sort of solutions and services to address those challenges. But it's a dialogue oriented, but I think 10 years ago when we used to sell testing in QA, it used to be very tough. Now, I think, of course, the times have evolved. There's a change, as I mentioned earlier, QA is now an inclusive function rather than an independent function. Hence, organizations tend to discuss more openly about the challenges because they need external mindset. And one thing that organizations need to really understand, especially the small and medium startups and small and medium enterprise, it's very hard to build an in-house team that covers the entire life cycle of software testing and QA, because that includes so much diversity of skill set and tool set and process set that it tends to take them away from their main goal, which is the business they want to do and the technology that leverages their business, right? So they had to focus on the business and the software or application that they are building in order to support that business. If they start moving into building up the end-to-end software testing and QA team, it would be more expensive for them and it would dilute them. And that's where we basically help them think through how, through different kind of goals that they have, they can map their goals to the kind of external strengths that exist with independent testing and QA companies like Qualitative. And then those specialized skill set can be borrowed from here. And then we also help them embed the process set and tool set so that they are at least self-sufficient in some way, even if the skill set is borrowed from outside. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so basically you are saying is that focus on your core skills and then let us deal with all the quality aspect, because I think you need an external service to take care of that.
Of course. My recommendation usually to organizations is that they need to own the testing strategy along with the engineering strategy. But once the strategy is there, they need to leverage others who are more proficient in tool set and skill set and process set in order to achieve those goals.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think the last question we can have today would be Mr. Adil.
Thank you very much. Actually, I just want to know about your expertise, that what kind of data set you will use for IoT service devices for quality of service metric, for example, if you think the vehicle application scenario. So because I worked on this project, so I needed some kind of metrics on it. For example, what would be the response time, availability, and reputation type things. So if you can help in this regard. Thank you.
So Adil, IoT is an emerging area, and I'm not able to really think of some of the matrices and the standards that have evolved over the last couple of years around IoT, but there are definitely some of them that exist in certain segments and certain industries. So I think those matrices can be identified through those, I would say, processes or frameworks that exist for those segments. However, when you are thinking of any IoT application, if we just go to the basics, it's an amalgamation of different hardware coming together to do a certain function. Now, those hardwares are typically using different kind of applications in itself as well. When all of that is integrated, we have to pick a starting point. Now, you need to understand what you are trying to achieve. Either it's a functionality level test that you have to perform all across, it's an integration level test that you have to perform all across, it's a performance level test that you have to perform across certain integrations of those hardware, or is it a security level test that you have to perform against the whole infrastructure of that hardware. And then once you jump onto those core components of the IoT infrastructure, then within those core components, you have to identify and define what kind of depth do you need to really go in testing your entire functionality. Because I'm sure that within an IoT, you are borrowing some of the pre-existing components. You are writing some code to make them work together or create some kind of an output that is according or required by your project or goals. So based on all of that, you have to think through how you define your testing strategy. Once that strategy is defined, then of course the teams jump in and start executing, and that's where you tend to understand what kind of problems, what kind of defects, and what kind of quality exists for your entire IoT infrastructure. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I would like to thank Mr. Jamil Gohir for sharing his time with us and on a very important and contemporary issue in the field of information technology. I would also like to thank all the participants that have joined us today, and some interesting discussion has also happened. As I said at the beginning, the video of this tech talk would be available on the web page, on the YouTube page of the embassy. And we will also post a shortened version of it on our LinkedIn page. So you can access that at any time. And then the details of Mr. Jamil Gohir and qualitism, they are also visible on the screen. So if there are any further queries or if there are any requirements for any services, so he can be reached directly. So once again, I thank everybody and wish you a very good evening.
Thank you, Ahmed Saab, and thank you all the participants. It was prayer, and I'm available for any kind of questions later on. You have the contacts, and looking forward to stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.